Revolutionary talk for revolutionary times. Promoting peace, liberty, and prosperity around the clock. LibertyTalk.fm.
Welcome to another edition of Liberty with Love. Last weekend you had a special election edition, and this weekend you have a special election edition, but we are now the other side of the election in a whole new America, perhaps. And I'm actually recording this on the road from the grand metropolis that is Pullman, Washington. Was actually speaking today, doing the political communication seminar thing at Wazoo, as they call themselves, Washington State University, here in Pullman, which seems to be at least 50% the university, as far as I can tell. And of course, we talked about Trump and recent events quite a bit over the couple of hours that I had at the university today. And according to the news, we've got protests in the streets across America at this outrageous decision made by the American majority, or an American majority. I guess because it's always the majority that stays at home, really, right? The main majority. But of those who turn out, right? So here we are. Americans have decided, so it seems, and you can argue about the popular vote and the Electoral College and all that, but basically America has decided that Donald Trump is less gross than the American political establishment. And since I'm in the hotel room post to the seminar, I'm actually here with my good friend, and I call him my handler now because he's the one that gets me into and out of these locations for these events that I do, Paul Addis. And I also call him my engagements manager, which sounds a little bit better than my handler, I suppose. Sure. But and actually, people who've listened to the show, my listeners know of you because you ran, Paul, for lieutenant governor.
Yes.
And that's not the first office, and it won't be the last that you've run for.
Right.
And we've had you on this show, and so thanks for just being here with me to help keep me awake through this late night recording.
It's always great to be on the road spreading the message of liberty and love.
It is indeed. It is. It is very good, and it's always a lot of fun to do it with you, Paul, and thank you for everything you do for me. So, So that's my take, actually. That's my one-liner. Americans have decided that Trump is less gross than the political establishment. It seems to me that the election was kind of about... I mean, I'd said a while ago, and I'm sure lots of people said this, that nobody was really voting for Trump or voting for Hillary. They were voting against the other one, or maybe against... in the case of people voting for Trump, they were voting, obviously, against politics as usual. So it was really, do you dislike what Trump is more than you dislike what Clinton represents? And I actually thought that if I'd had to bet on it, I would have bet wrong. I would have bet that the American personality, right, was such that they would be more repelled by what Trump is as a person, or what Trump seemed to be. Let's say that, because I've never met the guy, and I don't mean to actually cast...
In the media, anyway.
In the media, what we saw of that man. Then they were repelled by the political establishment. Now, actually, obviously, it goes without saying that I'm utterly repelled by the American political establishment, as I think it's fair to say you are too, most respectful.
I agree.
And so there's a sense in which, for me, especially, that's a really reasonable choice that the American people have made, despite the fact that my conscience wouldn't allow me to vote for either of them, because, as I have said on this show, it does seem to me, based on the evidence I've got, and I only have to go on what everybody else has to go on, and through the media and through the books and all the rest, that he's a bit of an egomaniac. And also, the thing that concerned me hugely about Trump was that he just said the first thing that came to his head that patently wasn't true in many instances, and you can say, well, politicians do that, and they do, but
at the same time, he wasn't a politician.
And at the same time, he wasn't a politician.
Politicians do that, and they get away with it because part of the system. He wasn't a politician.
Yes.
So him saying it may not have been saying it. Maybe you were afraid that he wasn't saying it for political reasons. He actually could be dangerous.
Yes. Yeah, actually could. I mean, and the example I gave before, just so people kind of are clear what I'm getting at here, was when he went to that county in West Virginia that voted more for Trump than any other county anywhere in the country. An old mining county where they're very poor now, the mine's been shut down. And Trump goes there. It's interesting that he went there. I mean, that tells you something, right? So he had something right, the fact that he went there, and we'll talk about that later. But he said, basically to all these poor miners, we'll open your mines up again. And I'm like, well, no, you won't. We have a free market that will decide whether those mines get opened up again. If they're economically destroying value, right, then you keep them closed unless you're going to become a communist, kind of nationalize them all. I mean, was he suggesting that? Either way, it was horrendous. Yeah. So I had a problem with Trump. I had enough of a problem that I couldn't vote for him, and enough of as I think I also mentioned, a couple of times, the whole First Amendment thing. We'll just close down the New York Times because we don't like what they write, right? So I had these problems with Donald Trump. So and then of course there was, and it is worth mentioning, the video of that whole grab the women thing
on the bus.
And I, for the record, and I think I've said this to you, Paul, I don't think this was a man who commits sexual assault. But what I do think is this is a man who's trying to be an alpha male, who's got an ego problem and needs to talk himself up so much that he would say that he talks that way. So it's not that he's done anything wrong, it's that he thinks that's okay, that's a measure of the man. What does a person like that do in the highest political office in the country? That was a big question mark for me.
Yeah, well, surely we've had alpha males in that office in the past.
That's true.
And so, if you could find one to say, here's an example of an alpha male in the office, here's what they do. But again,
that's a certain kind of alpha male, isn't it?
Right.
Really,
I mean, they were playing the game coming up through the system.
Yeah.
This was somebody totally different. And honestly, as you said, it's what the media portrays him to be. And so we don't know. He was kind of an unknown.
And this was another thing I said on RT the other day, that the American people were given the choice between the devil they knew, Clinton, and business as usual, and the devil they didn't, Trump. All bets are off, right? And they went for the devil they didn't know,
which can be scary and dangerous.
And I think the American people knew they took a risk with Trump, and they were happy to take it because the devil they knew
was so bad.
Now, it's interesting because...
And I think what you mentioned earlier about it was more of what Clinton represents. So it's not that we're saying she's a devil and she's so bad as a person.
No, that's right. Thanks for clarifying.
The devil they know is this system that they've seen become what it has become. The cronyism, the political favors, the pay to play, just everything, the tearing down of the rights and all. I mean, of the people, the spying and the wars, that devil. Not Clinton, but what you represent
You've got it.
Is so bad.
It's so bad.
It has become, which I think you've mentioned many times.
Well, yes.
It is bad. It is so bad that it is amazing in a way that somebody like Trump, a person like Trump, a personality like Trump, a character like Trump could, in comparison, relatively speaking, not look as bad as that to so many people. And
that's exactly right. And I mean, if he's so awful that anybody who even supports him is one of the deplorables, thank you, Miss Clinton, then to lose against that, if they're right, if the Democrats are right, if he's that bad, then, oh my goodness, we've been talking about the Republican Party falling apart, Republican Party soul-searching. Discussion, that's a reasonable discussion. But if even half of that is true about Trump, to lose, for Clinton and the Democrats to lose against him, which party should be searching their soul right now? Which politicians should be searching their soul?
To the point, I think they will be. Both probably, but certainly Democrats now more than what they thought they would be are going to be searching their soul, because there are questions that need to be answered. As you say, to lose to that, what seemed like a sure win, which there's something else there, which I think we'll probably get into.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Wow.
Because I don't think as you say, the deplorables. I don't think half of the United States of America are racist, sexist, people like what the personality we saw from Trump as an individual. I don't think they're identifying with him for that reason.
Yeah, and actually, I'll go even further than that. I don't even think we have enough evidence to say, I'm not going to say Trump is a racist. I'm not even going to say, and though it's easier to make the argument that Trump is a sexist, but it's very easy to see how he could be interpreted that way. And you would think if he's running, that he would at least be smart enough not to cause that kind of offence and beg that kind of interpretation, which he has done. Which to me, again, gives me pause, because if it's not the case, why would you even talk like it might be? Right?
Well, I will say that for me, Trump is too litigious for me to say anything bad about Trump on this radio show. So I will reserve my thoughts on Trump as a person, because now he's a president, and it really is, I think, at this point, as important, if not more important, than the policies.
Yeah, okay, so we're going into the first break. This is fun to be doing this with you, Paul. This is Liberty with Love with Robin Koerner. So we were talking about this earlier, Paul, and actually in the speech I gave today, that even to a greater extent than I had expected, this is Brexit all over again, in a particular respect.
Yes.
And I made a prediction to some friends, probably to you, and now I'm kind of wishing I had done it publicly. But I should have the courage of my convictions. See, I'm learning. But the one thing I did say, I kind of did make a prediction, which was wrong, which was that I thought Clinton would get it because the response to Trump as a person, it was viscerally negative, would exceed, rightly or wrongly, would exceed what? Would exceed everything that was in play, pretty much. That people just wouldn't go there. But one thing I did say, but I don't think I said on the show, was that just as Nigel Farage, with his apparently more conservative right-wing politics, took in the north of England votes from the left-wing Labour Party in the general election last year, right, against the prediction of all of the media and all of the pollsters, who said Nigel Farage running UKIP, a more conservative party, more like the British Conservative Party. The commentator said that the UKIP would therefore split the vote on the right? So it's kind of like saying libertarians would take away Republican votes, and therefore the Labour Party, the British Democrats, would do well at the election. That's what they said would happen, and it made sense if you believe that people's political allegiances follow their political beliefs. But it doesn't work that way, as I always say, right? You identify with a politician or a political tribe or party for reasons that are not rational. They're usually cultural and emotional. So how did Nigel Farage make the media wrong in England? He made them wrong by, in the north, taking more votes from the left-wing Labour Party, as I said, than from the Conservatives. And how did he do that? He didn't do it by convincing them of a new political argument. He did it by reflecting back to those people up in the working class north, the kind of folks they were and the kind of fears they had. And the kind of folks they were is, let's say, blue collar, right? They like to spend time down the pub with a pint and a cigarette and hang out at the bar, and good on them too. They do not need to be condescended to because of that, right? And Nigel Farage, the leader of UKIP, would be seen with a pint of beer and a cigarette leaning on a bar. That was how he got the media to portray him. And he would talk about the things that those people in those bars up north in England were talking about. He would express their fears. He wasn't trying to educate them in a whole new political philosophy. He was just reflecting back to them what they already felt, and especially those feelings that move actually move votes more than anything, which are feelings of injustice. People, right? And so here again, and so what the thing that I said to some friends was, you will see Donald Trump do better in the blue collar working class Democratic strongholds than people are expecting, and that isn't because of political affinity. It's because of cultural affinity. It's because he's reflecting back to these folks who they are.
Right. That's that Rust Belt.
the Rust Belt.
The blue wall the blue wall they had to penetrate.
Ohio and Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. There it was.
Yeah, it was amazing to see. And I think when you talk about reflecting things back to people, something they already feel, this may get lost for the people on the left as far as exactly what he was reflecting. Because if you were to say that Trump was reflecting back to people what they already thought, the left, I think, are going to go straight to racist, sexist, the things he said, and think, he's reflecting the racism, the sexism, the Mexicans are rapists, the women are this or that. But that's not what you're talking about, him reflecting back to the people. It was more of the sense, as you say so often, that about the injustice, that there are people that break the rules that get things that people that don't break the rules don't get.
Right.
And while he was not saying those things necessarily like that, but in a way that we probably wouldn't, it was the same sentiment, which is interesting because I don't think the left is going to get that from what Trump said. It gets lost in the other things he said, which I don't think, as you say, they felt that the problems with the system were more gross than those things he was saying. It was other things he was saying that they were hearing and being reflected back. And what's interesting is I think it's very similar in that sense to what Bernie Sanders was saying, which is odd to say that Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders, in that sense, were doing the same thing and, in a way, the same candidate.
Right.
Most people couldn't probably quite understand.
One of them was reflecting back the injustice of people getting things, people who break rules getting things that people who don't break rules don't get. That was why, specifically, his campaign got launched with his stand on immigration and his speaking to that, because that's what he's talking about. Like, that was the subtext of that, right? And then, as you rightly say, you've got Bernie who's saying, it ain't fair that people who blow up our economic system and saddle working class folks, young students with debts and the whole thing, right, that they get bailed out by the very taxpayers who they screwed, right? You don't need a political ideology to agree, to feel those things. This is so important, right? Insurgents, Trump and Sanders, as you say, the same in as much as they had a successful insurgency based on reflecting back on injustice. That injustice wasn't something that people just believed because of a political philosophy. It was something they felt before they even got to any political philosophy. And Nigel Farage did the same thing to make Brexit happen. What the injustice that he was reflecting back was, it just can't be right that people that we can't unelect get to make laws that govern our lives. Hence, EU, right? So it works at the same thing, and it works at the same level.
Yeah, and so I think that, and as I say, I think the left may not understand what happened, because if it were, as they will probably be saying and are saying, it was because Hillary was a woman, it was racist, sexist that voted, came out of the hills of the hillbillies, came out of the hills and voted for Donald Trump on those issues because they are racist and sexist like him, then I think they're missing the bigger point in that I don't think, from what I've seen, Hillary did as well with women as they expected. Donald Trump did better with minorities than, say, Mitt Romney did. Yeah. If that were true, that this was about racism and sexism, and that's why he got all these votes, that wouldn't. But the data doesn't show that. Right. So there is, as you say, there's something else that's driving this, and as you say, I think it's because they weighed the two in the balance, the system she represents versus the I would say the change or the speaking to injustice that he represented, and they went with him. In large numbers. And
it's worth saying that that a lot of people who voted for Trump, they look sexist and racist to a lot of folks on the left who are protesting right now, for example, because to those folks on the left, the reason they didn't like Trump was that they saw sexism and racism in him, right? Because a lot of folks on the left, I'm not saying all of the left, but a lot of folks on the left, the politics of the left are the politics of collective identities, certainly victim groups, right? So we're talking women, immigrants, LGBTQ, these groups. Politics of the left are about showing care for those victim groups. So if they don't like Trump because he's not doing that, but they see the world that way, so their explanation for the votes of those they disagree with comes out of their paradigm, the left-wing group-based, do you care for this group or not, paradigm. It's an example of, the left applying their paradigm to people not of the left, me applying my paradigm to you, when your logic is completely different. It's about seeing the world through my lenses, and that's why Hillary Clinton didn't realize that when she said deplorables, she just got another 250,000 votes for Donald Trump.
Yeah, and that's the problem, I think, looking at things through your paradigm or getting into their paradigm. And I certainly want to say that, I didn't vote for Trump. I'm not a Trump supporter, so I'm certainly not defending the man. And I think we can get into that. You don't have to respect the man, but if you can understand what happened,
Stairway Press is pleased to announce the publication of Robin Koerner's first book, If You Can Keep It, Why We Nearly Lost It and How We Get It Back. Jeffrey Tucker, in the book's foreword, wrote, "We seek to end government as we know it, but that is not the whole of what we seek. We also favour something beautiful. Explaining what this looks like and the rhetorical apparatus that necessarily accompanies this is the greatest value of Koerner's book." Barry Farber, award-winning talk show host, wrote, "Robin Koerner's political, psychological and philosophical rampage through today's America, turning on lights we didn't even know were off, takes more and more of your intellectual breath away, according to how high you rated intellectually in the first place." Chris Ann Hall, constitutional attorney and educator, says, "Robin Koerner is a defender of liberty and a true lover of America's constitutional republic. The knowledge that Robin brings to his readers is sure to be instrumental in the restoration of our American foundational principles." If You Can Keep It, by Robin Koerner, published by Stairway Press. Go to ifyoucankeepit.us for your pre-ordered, personally signed copy. In 2011, Robin Koerner wrote the article that launched the biggest coalition for Ron Paul's presidential run, called Blue Republican. Now, Stairway Press is pleased to announce the publication of his first book, If You Can Keep It, Why We Nearly Lost It and How We Get It Back. Jeffrey Tucker, who wrote the foreword, says brilliant ideas come in effervescent packages. This is a good description of Robin Koerner's provocative work. It's a work of stunning erudition and sincerity. I also happen to agree with it. I've been struggling toward a similar thesis for a good part of my writing career, though I'm certain Robin has gone beyond even my most mature thought. His section on liberty as a realization of a civilization of love truly sweeps me away with its insight and depth. I know that time is short and that people don't read as carefully as they should, but this section deserves close study by every advocate of liberty. It will change the way you think and speak about the topic. We need this book now. Pre-order your personally signed copy of If You Can Keep It at ifyoucankeepit.us.
Yeah, we were talking going into that break about the importance of understanding things you don't like, right? Neither of us, you or I, Paul, voted for Trump. Neither of us voted for Hillary.
Right.
But if we're gonna not become divided in a sense that, in a way that's going to just cause more pain, choices have to be made all over the political spectrum, right? To try and understand the other, and that's a choice that everybody has to make for themselves.
Yeah, I think
and it's contradictory with it's at odds with demonizing. It doesn't exist in the same space. Right,
and I think that people have to understand, because there are certainly, as always, in times like this, there are calls for unity. Mm-hmm. I will say, I think we, at this point, at this stage, we need to understand there's a difference between unity and healing. Mm. Whether or not unity is going to happen, it sure isn't going to happen before healing. I think that, for instance, I told my wife after the election, when it happened, and I heard people on the Trump side saying, "Okay, now our guy won. Let's get everybody together. Let's get unity now." And I said to her, I think that the Trump supporters can expect about the same amount of unity as they have given to President Obama when he was calling for unity, when he won, saying there's not a black America or white America, there's a United States of America. He was asking for the same unity. And as we've seen throughout Trump's campaign and throughout the 8 years of Obama, the people have really been, not unified with Obama's policies and stuff, and have been attacking him in many ways for 8 years. So I think in that sense, they can probably expect the same type of unity from them. But I think what we're seeing with the riots, and there are places, it was a shock to many people, to most people, what happened. And there's a lot of hurt, and I, like I said, I didn't vote for Hillary or Trump, but I feel for these people. And this radio show is called Liberty with Love. I mean, so on the love side, let's say that there are people that are legitimately hurting for whatever reason. You know, they are legitimately hurting, and I think that your message specifically can really speak to them if they will listen in a way to help them understand, if they can, that it wasn't, because if you're a woman, you know, and you think that, you know, in your head in some way that because of what happened, all these people are sexist and your world just got a lot tougher. To live your life and fight your fight, it just got a lot tougher because it's acceptable. That's what you think happened. If you think that they voted for Trump because of sexism, you would feel this, and it would be a scary world going forward. If you're a minority or an immigrant, you think that it's about racism and you're a minority, you would think that half the country hates you or and you have a reason then to be frightened about that. So the healing, I think, can come better, quicker, more easily if they were to understand these things that you teach, which is it's not the racism. It's not. They're not giving Trump the man respect as much as they're saying this person talked about things that nobody else talked about, and it wasn't about racism or such. We don't even necessarily like the guy, but there was this sense of injustice out there. That there were people, you know, he talked about the cronyism, pay for play too at times. But there are people with moneyed interests that are getting away with things that normal people can't get away with. There are people breaking rules that are getting things that people that don't break rules don't get. There was that sense of injustice. The people on the left, like I said, like Bernie Sanders, is very similar in that sense. The people on the left have that in common with the Trump people, just like Bernie Sanders has that in common with the Trump, or their campaigns anyway. If they could understand that at that human level, I think it would help the healing. And I don't think we're going to get to unity, even if we get there or not. I'm not even sure if it's possible for Obama supporters or Hillary supporters or Sanders supporters to ever love Trump or be unified with his policies even. But at least understanding this election, it was not, the world hasn't changed in that sense. There aren't more racist and more sexist out there because Trump won. That's not what it was about. And if you get that, you can maybe feel that your world's not as bad. It didn't change overnight and get so much worse. So, hopefully. And
I kind of spoke to this somewhat starkly with a post recently where I just made the point, because it is friends on the left hurting, and I have... I know people of Hispanic descent and women who are feeling exactly those things, and these are people who I care about. So I just want to put that out there. And, you know, but I did make the point in this post recently that if you make a decision about who someone is based on one thing you know about them, and that decision is that they are a bigot or some other negative moral kind of term, then you in so doing are the bigot. And one of the reasons Trump, I believe, was able to win is that there are a lot of people who are not sexist or do not experience themselves as such, and if they did, would do something about it, are not racist or do not experience themselves as such, etc., right? But have been told by by a political establishment and a media establishment, and maybe a party, maybe the Democratic Party, maybe, right? I'm not saying this is so. I'm saying this is what people have felt, are being told by these different institutions that there's something wrong with them, that they shouldn't think that it's okay to want to monitor the border and maybe even secure it more, because if you do, you are a racist. And they just know that isn't true of them. And they are being told this from all quarters, from the left of the political spectrum, as I say, from the media, whatever it is. And so in the end, when somebody tells you what to think, and then they tell you, if you don't think it, you're bad, and you just honestly feel in your heart of hearts that ain't true, when you have a chance to go to a ballot box and, like, you know, lash back out at all those people who have basically been condescending to you, or a society or a culture that's been condescending to you, then you do it. And I think, because what else can you do? How else can you make your culture aware that what's being said of you and maybe your friends and neighbors just isn't true? Like, how else do I tell somebody that just because I want to, let's say, build a wall on the southern border, if that was the thing, I'm not a racist? How do I communicate that? Trump is kind of a proxy for communicating that. And that's a real thing. I really do think that's a real thing. And I really do hope that people will look in trying to understand what's happened politically to the psychology that's driven it, because it is our human psychology that we all share. You know, if we are not united in politics, we are united in psychodynamics. The same things upset us, the same things make us angry, the same things make us scared. And the same things attract us to an insurgent campaign. Whether it's Sanders or Trump. That is the common ground that we all have, and I've really hated to see people so hurt by politics. When we have so much in common, and even the things that drove this election the way it did are actually things we have in common. And you know what? I just really want to say to my friends who are horrified about what's going on, you know, just because you didn't vote for Trump because you see in him sexism, that just doesn't mean that somebody else was okay with sexism. It may mean that they voted for Trump in spite of the fact that they saw sexism in him because they saw something else was worse. That says nothing about, as you said, I'm kind of unpacking your point, that, you know, there's any more sexist, you know, out there, or, you know, and it's just, but it takes work, right? When you're hurting, it takes work to go, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to kind of travel across this emotional, this paradigmatic gap, to try and there's a big payoff to it, and the payoff is that the world isn't so big and nasty and changed, right? If you can do it, if you can understand that, and help. And I really say, you know, it's that Guns and Gays article that I so often find myself talking about. The best way to feel better about this, and I'm sure this is true, hard as it is to go have a friendly conversation with the guy who voted the other way, right? And go in wanting to have a relationship with that person if you don't already, and to actually go and try to understand. And so just to say that it's work for the person who's hurting to heal. True, for some it's almost impossible, but it should be work for all of us to do. Even if we're the ones on the other side that aren't hurting because we don't feel that, because we maybe understand it a different way, or we were a Trump supporter, those people, we're all part of this thing. I mean, it does speak more to healing than unity. You don't have to agree on the policies, but there should, I think it would be good if those people would help those people by trying to understand them. Don't necessarily. It's going to work both ways. I mean, if you're a Trump supporter, and you find yourself with and we're in Washington State where Hillary actually won the state. If you're a Trump supporter here and you run into a Hillary supporter and you're talking with them, you know, I mean, try and understand it from their perspective. I mean, help them understand, in a good way. I mean, not criticizing their candidate or anything like that, but help them to understand that you're not, like, build those bridges, make those relationships, show them you're not sexist, you're not racist, you're a normal person like them. And not only are you not sexist, you know, almost more importantly, you've got to be able to see the reasonableness in their fear that you, as someone who would support a man who would do this and would say this, it is, you know, the responsibility. Validate them. And I think there's healing in that. It should always be in making relationships, connecting with people, understanding people, validating people. There should be healing in that. It is work for everybody to do. And again, remember that we don't, our political allegiances don't follow, you know, our rationally formed political beliefs. It's the other way around. There are people today who are believing things because that's what Trump said, but they didn't come to Trump because that's what Trump said. They came to Trump for all of these other reasons. And the same works on Hillary's side.
Exactly.
So, just remember that. We're all very complex, and we're all led to our political views by a life of experiences that will be different from me as they are, for you, right? There's a reason why we all get to where we're at, and it's that whole thing about don't judge a man until you've walked 100 miles in his shoes or whatever, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It was a great talk today at Washington State University. We actually went out afterwards with some of the folks that were there, and there was a young man, student who I was talking to, and we got on the subject of the whole police thing, the police and the minority community, and Colin Kaepernick, the quarterback for the 49ers, who kneels, and this guy I was talking to was he thought he was offended, let's say, by Colin Kaepernick's demonstration, the way he chose to do that. And so we started talking about it. Of course, he grew up in a military family, and so he felt offended because thought it was disrespectful for the military. As we were talking, I like to challenge people on their paradigms, and so I was explaining to him that let's look, because I'm a veteran myself, so is my wife, and so I say if Colin Kaepernick, let's say, believes that there's something out there that's unconstitutional, where people's liberties are taken away by some systematic process, and the government isn't doing what it should be doing to defend those rights, then him protesting in any way he chooses to do it against abuse of the Constitution, or abuse of people's rights, in contrast to what the Constitution is there for, then protesting the anthem and the flag might be a fine way to do that if that's how he chooses, because that's what they represent, the Constitution, the American government, in our American way. And so this guy I was talking to mentioned that there was a coach somewhere who had brought World War II veterans into their locker room and told his players, hey, these people, fought for our freedoms, and that. And I told this guy, I said, that's great. I said, those guys that fought in the wars, like myself joining the military, we took an oath to defend the Constitution. That's how they chose to do it, to go out and fight the war on other lands and all. Colin Kaepernick, I believe, in his heart, is defending the Constitution in his way. So in a way, he's doing the same thing as those guys, and as me as a veteran. In that sense, if that's what he's doing, then he's a brother, a band of brothers in arms with me.
You found the common ground beneath the difference.
If that, and I believe that's what his issue is, then I'm not offended by what he's doing, because I can actually see that we're doing the same thing in different ways. If you take offense, it's you taking offense, not necessarily him giving it. And if you feel disrespected, it's not necessarily because he's disrespecting you. It's because you're looking at what he's doing through your paradigm and judging him through your eyes. And it was an interesting conversation, because again, we get back to what's going on now after the election. If we can see what's motivating these people and get into their paradigm, it can help. And I say we, I mean, no matter what side you're on, we can see each other.
Americans.
See each other through the other paradigm than our own, or the other perspective, and maybe try and find that common ground. I think it's there. Unbelievably, maybe to some, I think there's common ground in some way, on some level, human level, between Trump supporters and Hillary supporters. Yeah, I believe that, and if we can help them find it, if they can find it, great. I think that's a worthy pursuit.
Well, and actually, we already know that there is very explicit common ground, because we've seen people who voted, some who ended up voting Hillary and some who ended up voting Donald. Hundreds of them on news shows, on radio shows, whatever, saying this is a lesser of two evils election. So we should, whichever side we're on, we should know that it wasn't that easy for our opponents to vote the other way, right? I mean, we know in this case that's really true. So there's a point. Yeah. There's a point of common ground there. Anyway, we're going into the break. God, there's so much to say about this. This is such a big week in America. We'll be back shortly. So So to close out the show, I just want to say again, that all the work that I do in politics rests on this belief that the only legitimate ends of politics are people. And it's that idea that makes sense of the need that I see to ask the question, what would love be politicized, right? My argument for liberty, broadly speaking, is that liberty is the politics of love, and we need love now more than ever. I'm going to take this opportunity to kind of plug my book again, because part of the book that I get asked a lot about in interviews is this notion of putting love into politics, right? Remembering that politics ultimately has to be about the people affected rather than the positions taken. The positions taken are really only a means to the end, and the end is the well-being of people. So please, if you really want to be part of the healing that I think we need right now, do consider picking up a copy of my book, because this is something I care about deeply. You can go to ifyoucankeepit.us. The book is called If You Can Keep It. So it's at ifyoucankeepit.us. And if you order a copy there, I will sign it personally and send it to you, and I will be glad to do so. Yeah, I guess, there's also a story to be told, or maybe not to be told, about Gary Johnson's 3% or so on. But Trump and Hillary took a 3/4 of an hour, well, an hour for this show, right? So that's quite enough for one day. Yeah, it feels appropriate that this show, rebranding Liberty with Love, should kind of happen around the time of this election. It's exciting times. One thing that the Trump election certainly does do is throw, as we say in England, a spanner in the works, a monkey wrench here in America. It makes my job as a political commentator a lot more exciting. We do like uncertainty. Yes. It's going to keep me in business for a while. Seam. It's a rich seam, that's right. But seriously, folks, thank you for being with me. I think this is a good time to say God bless America, because God knows we need it. And let's bless each other. And that's a choice we have to make. Let's bless each other.
Revolutionary talk for revolutionary times. Promoting peace, liberty, and prosperity around the clock. LibertyTalk.fm.